Welcome back once again to the Pitlane Pals Formula One podcast. In this episode, we have a bit more off-season ranking shenanigans because there is no real new F1 news besides the fact that Lewis showed up at Ferrari, but we knew that was going to happen. It's not news. It's just there was some cool pictures dropped.
They were amazing. Beautiful pictures.
They were. It was funny. Some people in America, on like the American F1 fan base, were joking about the fact that Trump's inauguration was that day, and Lewis just is like, "Hey guys, no, look over here. We got me in a cool ass outfit, looking dope as fuck." But
with an F40.
Yeah, little change of pace for you. But today we are going to rank 1 through 24 because it was a bit of a weird year. All the F1 drivers from the 2024 F1 season, and how well we think they did given circumstances. You know, given the car they had, overall performances, etc., etc. We do not know what each other put yet, so it's going to be a bit interesting. We'll go down the list. So I'll go. My number one is X, and you'll go, my number one is this, and then we'll just keep going, and we'll see where we put different people. So I guess ready to get right into it. The
Pretty
first
much,
driver, I'm gonna start. Oh, do we?
Wait,
actually,
we should
start at the back?
maybe add this.
Okay.
This is not based off how they actually performed points wise. So
Yes.
we're not going to be pretty much copying the whole standings of the Drivers' Championship because that really doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're just going to be going off how we feel about them, how we feel about their performance, and this is not points based.
Yes, and again, we're taking a lot of aspects into consideration, and you know, just again, this is our opinion. So it's not. We're not saying this is definitive. Do not come for our throats, please and thank you. I guess we'll start at the back. And I'm gonna start at the back, and I think we're gonna have the same person at the back, given the circumstances. My number 24 is Jack Doohan, and that's no shot at Jack Doohan. That's just the fact that he had no chance to make it up the rankings any higher. He was given one race in 2024 at the end of the year, so it's just like he has to go with the back as a result. And I'm assuming you may have put the same thing.
Yeah, Doohan is at the last place.
Yeah, so, you know, kudos to him for getting a seat for next year. I am interested again to see if they actually keep him all year next year because the Colapinto stuff seems interesting. Yeah. But regarding 2024, that was that. Now, number 23, I think we'll also probably have the same person, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
Logan Sargent.
Yes.
Okay.
Logan Sargent is number 23.
All right.
I wasn't too sure. You kind of you're sometimes are quite the Logan Sargent fanboy.
I'm a Logan Sargent fan. I appreciate what he did for America. Actually, he made us look pretty shit.
I was about to say it's not like he performed.
No, he didn't do anything. We can't like knight him in America for anything if there was an equivalent, which we don't have. Sir Logan Sargent to you. But no, I mean, I wish him all the best in IndyCar. I'm now going on this list and realizing it's going to keep probably being the same person until we get to that middle range, because I have a feeling maybe the same person here again. We're kind of flying through this right now. I don't want to get through it too quick. There's just not a ton to say
We're going pretty quick
about Logan Sargent, other than the fact that he lost his seat to Colapinto, and that the only reason he's above Doohan is because of the circumstances that Doohan had one race, and I just can't really put him any higher because he didn't like kill. And if he like got points in that race, I'd put him higher than Logan Sargent, but he didn't.
Yeah, he did not know.
Number 22, Lance Strulovich.
Our boy, our favorite boy, Lance Strulovich. And now people are probably gonna say that he's way higher up the order, also on the driver's grid.
I don't know if many people would say that.
Well, we've had our fair encounter with one single Lance Stroll fan, so I will say
can't believe
this:
they exist.
I still cannot believe they exist, but they do exist.
Unfortunately,
based on how far away he was from Alonso, just based on the actual gap between the two of them, and how he just, I mean, we all know he's in that driver's seat because of his father owning the team. So
yes.
He was bound to be that far down the order.
Of course. Yeah, he's where he is because of his dad at this point. I mean, we've seen drivers perform better or even at his level that have gotten dropped. And I'm not saying he's the worst driver on the planet or that he's incapable of being an F1,
Yeah.
but he should have lost his seat a long time ago, and
Yeah.
he isn't
Yeah.
performing at the level
Yeah.
he needs
Yeah.
to be at Aston Martin, let alone in Formula One.
And
Number
also,
21.
wait. We gotta
Okay.
ease into it a bit.
I know, but I think we'll have some debates later.
No, just about Stroll already. There's a
Hmm.
big pay driver debate about him, and
Hmm.
because also I saw people saying that Norris is a pay driver, and like some other drivers who pay their way up, and I feel like you kind of have to
Colapinto.
differentiate. Yeah, Colapinto, for example, because Stroll's in his seat and he's being kept in this seat because of the money and because of his father owning the team. For example, I mean, to some extent, almost every F1 driver is a pay driver because there is a lot of money backing them up. If that is from their family wealth or if that's coming from sponsors, how much money the driver puts into the team and how much money comes with the driver is very, very important for making this decision. Now with Red
Yes.
Bull, they lost a bunch of sponsors and they lost a major sponsor deal with KitKat for 40 million because Perez left. So to some degree, there are pay drivers. They're all pay drivers, but Stroll is quite literally only being kept in F1 because his dad owns the team. We all
Yes.
know if his dad wouldn't be owning Aston Martin, he probably wouldn't be in F1 anymore.
It's true. It's true. Again, I'm not like hating on him. I just think it's the reality, and I think
Yeah.
some people that are Lance Stroll defenders forget that I'm not saying he's not capable of being an F1 driver, rather just saying that I don't think. I think he's had his time, and he should have gone a long time ago.
Yeah.
And at this point, I am a hater because I think it's a bit ridiculous that he still managed to keep his seat this long. With that being said, you mentioned somebody a little interesting who I actually have at my 21. Actually, no, I don't. I'm totally wrong. You did not mention him. At 21, I have Daniel Ricciardo.
I do as well. I was really confused just now because
No. Okay. You thought I had Perez.
No.
Okay,
Well, yeah,
okay.
because you said I mentioned him, but like, I was like,
Yeah, no, I thought I
what?
had Perez there. I got it mixed up. I have
Oh,
Ricardo here.
Ricardo.
My logic for Ricardo, and people may, I have seen, and I probably will see people argue that Ricardo should be above Perez here. My counter argument is going to be Ricardo had all the stakes. Everybody at Red Bull wanted him to be his replacement, to be Perez's replacement at Red Bull, and he never did. He was losing to Tsunoda by so much, so consistently, that they couldn't, despite how badly they wanted to promote him. And yes, of course, as we address, Perez does have the income that he brings from Mexico, and in that regard, and I do understand that. But in general, Ricardo had it. If he had just performed even equal to Tsunoda, he would have gotten the seat. And he fumbled the bag. And we like Ricardo. I like Ricardo. But his career was due in time going to end, and it did. And because of that, I think he belongs to 21 because he did fumble the bag this season.
I mean, I feel like when it comes to Ricardo, you can't forget he was handled with a lot of care in the F1 world. What happened to him and his send off wasn't really fair, but he had so many chances. We can't look back on Ricardo's career and say, okay, this guy just didn't get a chance. The time just wasn't right. The time was right. He had a lot of chances. He decided to leave Red Bull. He decided to go to Renault, McLaren, all the way down that road, and just didn't go well for him. And even at the end, they held on to Ricardo for quite a while. We now know, I believe it was Christian Horner actually holding on to Ricardo more than Helmut Marko actually was. But he did have the platform to prove it. And also the RBC, which he got. He had that last chance and it just never worked out. And Ricardo really he's the case of everyone wanted it to work out for Ricardo. He was like a massive smile in F1 and
It took a lot.
I still miss him, but
It took a lot for him to not earn that seat. It took a lot for him to not do it, and somehow he pulled that off, which is fairly impressive. Which also could be kudos to Yuki Tsunoda, but shocking at that. Number 20, the mistake I made earlier. I have Sergio Perez at number 20. Perez consistently the entire year. You making a face like I think maybe you did not have him where I have him. The thing with Perez is, again, your championship teammate is your teammate. Max Verstappen, yes, of course. He is Max Verstappen. I'm not saying I expect him to compete. And obviously Max got a lot out of that car that wasn't super spectacular. That being said, you had one of the worst second halves of a season I have seen from a driver when your teammate is doing that well. And just it's just one of those things where it's unfortunate. But you got dropped for a guy who raced a quarter of the season, not even. And they wanted to get rid of you so bad. I mean, you're still in the team at that. You are still in the team. But because your contract is so crazy, I think, is what that sounds like. But regardless, I think you consistently underperformed. Consistently. You were not making it out of Q1 sometimes. You rarely made it into Q3 at some points in the season. And you were going consecutive races with no points and no top finishes. And you just disappointed everybody at Red Bull consistently. And just, whether it's a mental thing, maybe the car just wasn't meant for him. At the end of the day, we're ranking off this season alone. And I do think Perez had good seasons in the past, and I don't think he's a bum. But I think in the Red Bull last year, he was the 20th worst, I should say, driver of the season.
I was looking confused at my phone because I actually didn't have Perez on the list, so I was missing a driver. But
that's who you were missing.
Cut that out.
Who you were missing.
That's who I was missing. But no, 20th is definitely for Perez. He was just not performing. He was so far off. Yeah, not much to say. It's just didn't work out.
Okay. I thought maybe you were disagreeing with me on that. I'm surprised because you're a bigger Perez hater than I am. And I thought maybe you were giving him the benefit of the doubt because he did score points or something. But no,
I think it's based on the outcome. I think now that he is dropped, it's like, okay, he did shit. That's it. If he kept the seat, I would have probably put him down even more.
I maybe would have put him above the next couple drivers I have in that situation, but still, because then I'd be giving him like, oh well, maybe there's something I don't know. Maybe there's something.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not seeing the stats the way that I should be.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, number 19 is Valtteri Bottas.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
We finally got some disagreement. Thank God.
Thank God.
I need some conversation. The reason I choose Valtteri Bottas at P19, in comparison, and I have not said Zhou Guanyu yet. The reason I have, or Guan Yu Zhou, I can't remember. The reason I have them that way, in that specific order, and it's not just because the points thing, but it partially is because of the points thing. They were so, yes, okay, Zhou rarely made it out of Q1, correct. Bottas did make it out of Q1 more often than Zhou did this year. He made it out of Q1, I believe, 10 times. But again, never got points. Zhou Guanyu did. At the same time, I think there was more times, again, maybe this is an eye test and maybe I'm misjudging here, but from my recollection, I remember more moments when Zhou was putting up a little bit of a feist. He was on the screen a little bit more than Bottas was during the year. I feel like he was at least making the Sauber a little bit more interesting to watch at different points in the season. And again, it's not like there's a big difference between the two of them. They both had the shittiest shitbox since Haas in 2021, probably. It was rough. But with that being said, I just still think Bottas's age, he could have done a little better. And yeah, I would have expected more, but I just think he underperformed. And again, there was moments where you're like, with Zhou, you saw flashes of like, could he be a driver that gets a seat in the future again, because I don't think he should be fully ruled out for that possibility. I think he's still got young promise. I just don't think he's ever had a decent car. He's been in a shitbox his entire career. So I'd like to see him still get that opportunity. For that reason, I would put Bottas at 19.
Okay, so funny enough, I'm actually putting Joe at 19. So we've got those two positions literally mixed. And my reasoning, you've pretty much already mentioned. It's just he consistently did a way better job in qualifying than Joe did. I know Joe did get points, but I feel like across the whole season in the shitbox he was in, I would kind of then put that higher as, I mean, the amount of things that went into Joe actually getting a point. It's just Bottas outperforming him in qualifying and getting into Q2 10 times this year. I think it was 10. I'm not really sure. We might have to check with production team there. But for me, I just value that a bit more. But that's just my opinion. That's why I have those two spun around quite literally.
Yeah. I'm assuming you have Bottas at 18 then.
You already know.
Yeah. Okay. So we basically flipped those two. Yeah. He escaped Q1 10 times. Just wanted to clarify that. So yeah. I mean, we basically already talked about it. I'm not going to repeat myself too much. I personally think just Joe impressed me a little more this year. He's a little younger. Impressed me a little more in that shit box of a shit car, which wasn't on TV all that much, anyways. Versus Bottas, and I'm sure you could just say the same thing reversed.
Yeah.
Number 17, and this may be a little early, but I have Liam Lawson.
Oh, that's very early.
And I'm going to tell you, I know he earned the Red Bull seat.
You're such a Lawson hater, bro. You're such a Lawson hater.
I know he got the Red Bull seat, but when I was doing some reminding myself, I'm just really reminding myself of how the season played out and looking at some standings and points. He scored only 4 points, and I know he only had a certain amount of races, but in those same races, you know, the RB wasn't a terrible car, and there's a couple drivers I have above Lawson here, which may surprise you, which largely due in part is because of where they also did not have a ton of time in their cars, and what they did with that time. But honestly, I mean, Lawson only scored 4 points, and he scored 4 points in 6 races, and it's like only 2-point finishes. I'm just saying, like, and of course in that same stint, Yuki also only scored 2 times, but Yuki also had a more consistent season, and on top of that, he scored more points. And so I'm not saying that Lawson was bad, and I'm not saying he's super bad or anything. This would genuinely be considered a good performance. There's just a couple guys, I think, on this list right ahead of Lawson here that I just think impressed me a little more consistently. And again, some of these guys are also because of longevity that you'll see, later on, whatever. But a couple guys that are also short-term drivers this year that I just think did a little better with what they had. So yeah, that's my take on Lawson. This area is very close. Lawson could literally, you could tell me he's way higher on yours. He could be 5-6 places up, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure. But there's an argument. All of this is very very close. But to me, this is where I found to put him.
Based because Tsunoda didn't get to see.
No. I'm not. I obviously have my preferences. But it's not really that as much as it is it wasn't really between him and Tsunoda for that position at all. Tsunoda was obviously going to be ranked higher than Lawson because he was consistent the whole year, and he was there the whole year. That was never the debate. There's a couple drivers that I'm kind of comparing him to subconsciously without name dropping him yet that did impress me more. It's not really a Tsunoda related thing.
Okay. So I actually have Behrman this far down the order. Okay. And that's based on the fact that he only had 1 race. He did good, no question. He did well.
2.
He had 1.
He had 2
races. Wait, did he have 1 in Haas?
He had 2, 1 in Haas.
Yeah, but he didn't.
Ferrari.
He scored
a point
with Haas
in Azerbaijan. He scored a point. Correct.
In Azerbaijan,
Yeah.
With Haas. Oh my god, I might.
This may have been. I'm gonna do some production team. And was that a sprint weekend? Is that where we're getting confused here?
I'm very confused right now.
I think it may have been a sprint weekend. Summary. Just go on your tangent here, but
yeah, I'm a bit.
he has a
I'm
point
bit
from
confused.
Azerbaijan.
Okay. So I didn't have that on my radar. I was only thinking about in his Ferrari outing in Saudi Arabia. Oh, whoops. I mean, I only placed him that
He
far
qualified
down
11th and finished 10th in Azerbaijan, beating teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Yep.
Shit, I gotta rearrange something.
Yeah. I knew I wasn't going crazy.
Okay, so after some rearranging and some difficulties, because I didn't quite have on my radar that he had 2 outings because I kind of forgot. It's been a while. Yeah, but I actually have lost as well. I look so stupid now, but no, I have to agree. Lawson, he showed a lot of pace and he showed a lot of promising pace, and he deserves the seat to some degree, but he didn't have a lot of time, and with the time he did have, there is a driver, for example, who did way better than him, even though he had some more time, but not that much. So yeah, P17 is going to be Lawson for me as well.
Okay. Glad to hear it after the crazy blasphemous allegation that was thrown against me for being biased. I'm happy to see you come around on that a little bit. Anyways, number 16, I have Sir Franco Colapinto.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And here's why I have Franco Colapinto above Liam Lawson. The reason I have him above him is because he was in a worse car. Now, Franco Colapinto did have 2 more races in F1 than Lawson did this year. But Franco Colapinto outscored Lawson during the season. And on top of that, he was in a Williams. And Williams only scored 17 points all year versus RB's 40-something. I'm going to fact check specifically what the number is so I don't sound like as stupid. But 46. Yeah, they scored 46 points, RB, with Tsunoda, Ricciardo, and Lawson over the course of the year. And meanwhile, Williams only had 17, and 5 of those 17 points did come from Franco Colapinto. So that's just more impressive to me on that basis. He outscored Lawson in a worse car, and yes, he did have 2 more races, but that really does not discount the fact that the Williams was significantly worse. And so the outings that Franco Colapinto did well did impress me more. I will say Franco Colapinto's production did go down a little bit later in the year, but nothing to dramatically concern me. So I will have Franco Colapinto at 16.
For me, P16 is actually Magnussen.
Okay.
Magnussen obviously losing his seat now. And I feel like he had good outings. He scored a total of 16 points with Haas. Not really much to say, to be honest. I feel like Magnussen is just very, very aggressive driver, and he very much has a driving style which I personally don't enjoy too much. I'm a very big fan of clean racing, so like pushing off the track all the time, even though
I like a little drama.
A little bit, but like when it's inside the regulations, okay. But I feel like I just love myself some clean racing. So P16 for me goes to Kevin Magnussen.
Interesting. I actually haven't said K-Mag yet, and I'm still not going to because here I have Oliver Behrman. Again, just only 2 outings did impress me enough to put him here. He scored significant points, and even if it was in a Ferrari, which is a quick car, he scored significant points, and then also beat Nico Hülkenberg later in the year in the Haas, as we previously discussed. So, because of that, I think he goes here, but I couldn't really put him any higher than this just because, again, a small sample size does hurt. I can't, objectively, obviously, if I was going off like average races, he'd be higher. But this is an all-season perspective, and some of these guys, like I just listed, Lawson, Colapinto, Behrman, could not be any higher than that because they didn't race the whole season. And to me, that does matter. There's fatigue. There's factors that can happen. And K-Mag did still score 16 points in a Haas, which was still significant points. I mean, obviously he was worse than Hulkenberg, but no, I think Behrman, for that reason, will still be ahead, or I said, sorry, below Kevin Magnussen on my list here, and for that reason, yeah. Behrman was good, but just small sample size. So
I will agree. It is a small sample size, but for me, it was just about better because he came in and I forgot the track name, but in Saudi Arabia, it is quite a tough race because it's very, very hot. Jeddah, yeah. He came in and he performed really, really quickly in the Ferrari, which also kind of is a difficult car. Not the most difficult to drive, but he did it in a really, really great fashion. So he really earned a lot of respect for me in that sense. So I'm putting him just above Magnussen. And it is a smaller sample size. It is true. But he also outperformed Hulkenberg in the Haas. So he's showing a lot of promising pace. So I'm gonna put him right above Magnussen.
For sure. You know what's funny is it feels like we're talking about next year because there's so many people that are going to be kind of rookies next year that raced this last year. Like I'm talking about Jack Doohan. And he was technically a competitor. Like that's just interesting to think about. But
yeah.
I feel like I'm missing Kimi Antonelli on here or something. Like he participated in the season as well at this point.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, we will kind of stay in the same realm of drivers. Kevin Magnussen is my number 14. Basically, for what I said before, I still like Kevin Magnussen's driving style. I think it brings some fun to the sport. I'm not as anti that as you are. In general, I just think that Kevin Magnussen was decent. He was decent, and just because of a larger sample size of races, being okay and in getting decent results for Haas when he could. I mean, he wasn't he was no Hulkenberg, and technically, Behrman showed once that he could beat Hulkenberg, and Ken Magnussen didn't do that. During the season, he lost to him over the course of the year, and so I do get that argument as well. They're very interchangeable in my opinion. I guess it really is the sample size for me. I just couldn't put K-Mag. I couldn't do it to put him below Behrman, Colapinto, or Lawson. And in this specific conversation, Behrman, just because of sample size.
I'm actually surprised here, but I mean, yeah, you didn't mention Behrman already because I thought we'd have the same one here. P14 is actually Ocon for me.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, Alpine wasn't really in the race for a big part of the season. They did kind of come through towards the end, but Ocon was far away from Gasly. Gasly fully popped off. Ocon also got into a lot of trouble with Gasly, so he's just didn't really impress me much this season. I mean, he finished with 23 points, and Gasly literally had 42, so there's quite a big gap there. So yeah. P14 for me, definitely Esteban Ocon, and I thought you'd actually have him there as well. Pretty surprised. Okay.
Yeah. Well, do I have news for you? My number 13 is Esteban Ocon.
Oh my.
Basically the same reasons you just listed. Again, I valued the sample size, and I don't think he's that bad. He just is a little overpraised, I think, if anything, which is sometimes why I go against Ocon when his conversation comes up. Mm-hmm. He's not that bad, and he had a decent season. However, again, when you have significantly less points than your teammate, and it wasn't just like Gasly had a one-off crazy race. The one-off crazy race he did have, you also had, and outscored him that weekend by a point, because you got second, he got, I believe, 2 before that, and then 15 from the third place. So, yeah, it wasn't like that was like this big determining factor. He almost doubled your points, not quite, but almost doubled your points. And so I could not put him any higher than this, surely. Again, the car was shit, and that's what it is for Alpine, unfortunately, usually. But again, I just think that there's better drivers ahead, and I don't think I could have put him any higher. And the reason he's even one position higher is just because I think sample size matters a little bit. And he wasn't that bad for me to put him below a couple very inexperienced drivers.
I feel like we're now getting into the realm of better drivers, like some coming up that are actually really good. And P13 for me is actually Hulkenberg.
Oh.
I
That's the
know.
first one you've said that's like surprised me. I normally
I
can
know.
read where you're gonna go,
I
but
know.
this
I
was
know.
surprising. Okay.
Bro can read me. Um,
Too many F1 podcasts, mate.
too many of them.
Too many.
So Hulkenberg actually had a good run, and he was doing really good. And he did actually impress me this season. I thought at the end of the season I would be having him lower than I actually do. It's just compared to some guys coming up, that also with P12 coming here, the person impressed me in a different way. P13 was the one spot where I put him. I mean, he did a great job, and especially considering it wasn't a Haas, he did a really, really good job. But it's just, I don't know. P13 for me. I feel like that's just where I would put him.
All right.
I don't know.
All right.
It's just a feeling thing.
I mean, I'll get to it when I get to him on my list. But I must go to P12 now. My P12 is Alexander Albon.
Okay.
I do think Albon took a step back this season from the year prior. I think I expected more out of him. Now, the Williams did seem a little worse, I would say. But I think what really deterred me was Colapinto being able to really give it to Albon a couple times during the season, and that shouldn't be something that I see from a guy like Albon. I just expect a little better. I'll be very interested to see how him and Sainz match up next year.
That'd be very interesting. It might be quite the reality check.
Because I don't know. I was very high on Albon coming out of 2023. Very high. And I mean, this is still relatively high placement for a guy like him.
Yeah.
But I expected a little more. He took a step back.
Yeah.
Again, this is still a decent placement for him at 12 is right. Yeah, 12. What's what we're on. I just think there was a little less fight in his driving this year. I just expected a little more out of him, and so for that reason, I think he can't go any higher. He definitely won't go any lower. He's in a little sweet spot here for me, but yeah, 12 is where I think he fits.
Albon just about nicked P12 for me, so he's going to be P11. Quick spoiler. But I actually put Colapinto in P12.
Whoa.
Colapinto coming in.
Whoa.
He really, really impressed me. Like, especially challenging Albon. Maybe this is off the bias of Albon not having too many incredible teammates the prior years. But I always held Albon to a very, very high standard. And the Williams are very, very hard car to drive. So I'm actually going to put Colapinto on P12.
That's high. I am again surprised by that. The reason I put him lower, and to counteract what you're saying, is just again because I think he did struggle later in the season, and he impressed me less as the season went on. He started off very hot and did slowly regress. Now, he wasn't awful, but he really did lack performances later in the season, in my opinion, and had a couple shunts as well. So that's the main thing. I'm very happy with where I put him. I'm surprised you put him so high. I know we were both pretty high on Colapinto, especially after those first few races, but that's high.
It is very high, and it also above Hulkenberg is a bit where I'm like, I'm not really too sure about it. But I feel like he was still very, very close to Albon. It's quite the hot take, 100%. George, oh my god, he was very, very close to Albon, even when he didn't perform too well towards the rest of the season, and that's just something that impressed me a lot. But yeah,
sure,
I'll take it from here. Okay, like the
okay.
rankings, because we're about at half roughly.
Just take a mental note that we are switching the order, so the numbers. He's saying first now, because that might get a little confusing, but he's saying it first now, so we're at 11, and he's going to be saying
it. Okay.
Because like if it was like the whole time, they might get like mixed up on which like number we're on when I've been going first. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. I got
but
you.
But it's okay. Just take a mental note if you're listening that he's doing it first now.
Okay. You're so helpful, mate. Thank you.
Of course.
For P11, I actually put Albon. So he did pretty well, but now it's just like, I mean, compared to his teammate, he did really, really well. And then Colapinto came in, so it was like a bit of a difficult situation. But I feel like Albon can be pretty proud of the season. He did lack a little bit, but just as a driver, I mean, he's very high. 11 is pretty high. I'm gonna stick with it. It's another hot take, but
Yeah.
Albon did pretty well. Probably should have switched him with Hulkenberg, but didn't. So I'm putting Albon at P11.
Okay. My number 11 is Yuki Tsunoda.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The reason I have Yuki here is because of consistency. Again, he's consistently been a P10, P11 driver in a car that clearly cannot exert that very easily because he's consistently beating his teammates. We're not going to get into the same conversation we've had all year about who deserved the Red Bull seat because we know where I stand on that. But in general, I have a lot of respect for Yuki Tsunoda and his consistency. I think consistency is a hard trait to find. I know he can be a little bit of a hothead, but I do think when he gets out of RB and is able to hopefully pursue a little bit of a different career with a different team, we'll see him shine over there as well because I'm very high on Yuki Tsunoda. I couldn't put him any higher than we have him currently on the basis of there's just some very good, impressive drivers for the rest of this list here. But yeah, no, P11 I feel good about.
Okay. So for me, Tsunoda made P10. Okay. Just one spot higher. There are a lot of good guys coming.
And I was getting accused of being biased towards Yuki Tsunoda, and you have him higher than I do.
Listen,
bitch.
Okay. I'm not the biggest Tsunoda fanboy. Okay.
Yeah.
But credit is credit is due, and I will say he did pretty well this season. He was pretty consistent. He consistently beat his teammates. Lawson didn't have a lot of time. Red Bull did choose Lawson over Tsunoda, saying Lawson is showing more promising pace. I do get that, and Tsunoda still has the issue of being too much of a hothead on the radio. It's been something we've criticized it a lot, and it's something that comes up pretty much every single time when we talk about Yuki Tsunoda. But yeah, a lot of impressive guys coming, so it's going to be 10 for me.
Okay. Number 10 for me is Nico Hulkenberg. Nico Hulkenberg scored 41 points in a Haas this year, which was not that impressive of a Haas. He did lose to Behrman once, but he consistently beat Kevin Magnussen, and the end of the year stint that Hulkenberg had was very, very impressive. And I think he's gonna do well. I wouldn't say I think he's gonna do well in Sauber because unfortunately it's Sauber. But whenever it becomes Audi, he may have some promise.
I don't know
but
about
again,
that.
I'm high on Hulkenberg. Yeah, we'll see. I'm high on Hulkenberg though, and I think he had a very, very spectacular season, especially at his age, and still showing like the same feistiness of some of the young drivers and being able to really, really put the car in some good qualifying positions as well. Hulkenberg had a fantastic year, and there's no way I would have put him where you put him. I think that Haas was not a spectacular car, and he was getting every ounce out of it all year long.
Yeah, if I would have re-ranked it, Hulkenberg would have been higher as well, but we're sticking with it now. We're doing the hot take. We're going to get flamed as a Drive to Survive fan in the comments.
Drive to Survive fan incoming.
But that's okay. That's okay. I'll take that. That's fine. P9 for me is actually going to be Gasly. And I think we're going to have the same one here. I'm not really sure, but I think so. Gasly did pretty well. Gasly performed very, very well in the Alpine, to be honest with you. Especially towards the end. He had just a mega stint, and he really impressed me this year. I'm going to be honest with you. And especially compared with Ocon, he was on it. He was on it. And he was crowned the driver with no damage all season long, which is also very, very impressive to think about. So yeah, Gasly's going to be P9 for me.
All right. P9 for me is Fernando Alonso.
Oof.
I think Fernando Alonso is one of the best drivers in the sport. I think he's one of the best three if you give him the right machinery. I do think there was probably a point in the year where maybe he became a little less motivated. That car was very disappointing and took a massive step back. But I just wasn't ever very impressed with his performance in the Aston Martin. I mean, again, maybe that's because I had high expectations from 2023. But yeah, I think he took a step back also as well as the car. I think if you give him a car, he's motivated. I think he'll be up there again. Now that they've got what's his name, Adrian Newey, in their department, and their car could be good in the future. Maybe not next year, but the year after. We'll see.
Adrian Newey actually
I'm high
said
on
that. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Newey actually said that Aston Martin is about, I think it was 20 months or something back on development, or maybe it was 2 months or something. But he said that the car definitely is very, very much back down the road when it comes to doing enough testing for presumably aero or engine. I don't know.
Yeah. I will say part of the reason I had Alonso, I had him actually higher when I was first doing it, and I went back and did some revision. What really sold me on this specifically is honestly just comparing to who his teammate is. Like, yes, he does impress me, but his teammate isn't a great comparison. Stroll is so bad that I feel like I maybe should have seen Alonso beat him by more. I know it sounds like funny because he beat him by so much already. I get it. And he did score 70 points to Stroll's 24. But I'm just saying, I'm not actually saying that's the expectation. This is not a knock on Alonso. I still think he was a top 10 driver last year. I just think that in a world where I'm comparing these next few who I think were very interchangeable in my eyes, that was kind of the thing that knocked him down. Was I was like, okay, well, guy have it 7, had a better teammate, and just in general, that was like a deciding factor for me. Was like, okay, yeah, but his teammate isn't great, and it's
interesting.
It's a little less impressive to beat your teammate by that much when it is Lance Stroll.
Interesting.
So, I still think he's good. I still think when he gets a better car, he'll be at the podiums again if that ever happens before he retires. But he's still a rookie, so
he's a rookie. He just freshly came in now.
But yeah, no. I mean, again, not a knock on Alonso. Just I'm kind of joking, but it was something I thought about.
Yeah. For me, Alonso's in front of Gasly. He's P8 for me. And he did score a whopping 70 points, and I do get what you mean with he wasn't incredibly impressive this year, but he was just very consistent with it. And even though when the car was very tiring to drive and just not performing at all, he still consistently put on a good position, which very much reminds me of Verstappen to some degree. So yeah, he did better than I thought he was going to do, but still P8.
P8 for me is Lewis Hamilton. The caliber of driver Lewis Hamilton is, I feel like he also knew that he was leaving at the end of the year and was a little less determined. But mainly while Hamilton is so low, he was good in the races. He made his life so damn difficult every weekend in qualifying. He never qualified where he should have been. And it's the first time in his career he's lost to his teammate in qualifying inconsistently. And Russell's good. Russell's a great driver, but Hamilton is Hamilton, and that should not be what's happening. That he should be at least closer to Russell in qualifying than he was this year, and more competitive like Russell was consistently this year. There's several weekends where Russell's fighting for high positions and Hamilton's barely in the top 10. And again, Hamilton was very good and feisty in the races, I will say. But I think because his qualifying was so disappointing consistently the whole year, it does deter me from viewing him any higher than I have him currently.
Fair. Very, very fair, because Hamilton is literally P7 for me. So very close. We're literally like one position apart from each other. Just quali. He just never really made it stick in quali. He still had his Hamilton moments, no question. He's an incredible driver, and I'm so excited to see what he's going to be doing in Ferrari. I really, really hope it works out for him.
Yeah. I could see an 8th championship.
Beat by Russell in quali. Yeah, could be 8th. But I mean, you pretty
Yeah.
much already said everything I was gonna say.
Yeah. P7, I have Pierre Gasly.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay.
Gasly
Jesus
really
Christ.
impressed me, and I think when we were looking at Alpine as one of the worst cars they've built in recent memory, and such a shit box, he still scored 42 points. And so for that reason, I'm very impressed. Again, his reliability, his consistency, didn't cause any damage. He consistently beat Esteban Ocon, and even when the car was shit, before their like kind of weird late season turnaround, he still got a couple exceptions and scored a couple points here and there. And then towards the end of the year, we're looking at a third place finish on the podium in the Alpine, which again, I know his teammate did second, but still that helps his case. And then we're looking at 10 points in Qatar, 6 points in Abu Dhabi, and it was a consistent finish to the season for him, and just a very impressive season in such a shitbox of a car that also, when it mattered, was able to help Alpine finish above Haas at the end of the year, finish above RB at the end of the year. When we thought, are they even going to score a point at the beginning of the year? Like, that's where we were at mentally. And somehow they managed to finish 6th in the Constructors' Championship, beating everybody besides, I guess, Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin. But that Aston Martin is a better car and was a better car all year. So because of that, I think Gasly needs his props. It was tricky putting him above Hamilton and Alonso. I won't lie. It wasn't an easy choice.
Quite a massive
It
point
was
gap.
tricky. It was tricky to do that, but I do have a lot of respect for what he pulled out of the car, given the circumstance, and then comparing it to his teammate who did not do that.
Okay. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Now I'm wondering if we have P6 the same. We'll see.
Maybe, perhaps.
Position 6 is George Russell for me. Okay. I can't see you, but probably. Okay. Well, we'll
yeah.
We'll
You
see.
can't see me today. I can see you. You can't see me.
Yeah, you can see my. You can see a
it's a
lower
one-way
version.
mirror.
The camera's right here.
A
and then you can
one-way
see me
window.
down there. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, George Russell had a pretty good year. He had a very good year. Qualifying, Hamilton consistently. I mean, what he pulled off in Spa was really, really impressive, even though he got disqualified afterwards. He outperformed Hamilton, 245 points to 223. And Hamilton is a 7-time world champion. So Russell had quite the good year, and he was pretty consistent. So I'm going to put him on P6. He can be very proud of this year. And it's going to be very interesting next to Antonelli next year. So we'll see.
Yeah. My P6 is not the same. My
What?
P6 is Carlos Sainz.
Oh, I had a feeling. I was between the two.
This whole section, I want to make it abundantly clear, from 6 up, well, from 6 to 4, I'll say. 6 to 4. This little range of 3 drivers were very interchangeable and very hard to place.
Yep.
For me, the reason being, again, was partially because the Ferrari was better than the Mercedes.
Okay.
And I think when I talk about Russell on my terms, I'll make another argument for why he is where he is. But again, I think Sainz was good. It wasn't super impressive. I mean, he had a couple good showings. But he did lose his seat at Ferrari. Again, not his fault. He
was 7-time world champion.
He didn't make a great argument, I don't think, enough to other teams. Now, I do think it's a bit ridiculous still, but I'm surprised he didn't land a spot at a better team than Williams. I know there wasn't a ton open, but there had to be something. You know what I mean? Like, anything else would have been better, honestly, besides Sauber. But and again, it's not really a knock on his performance of last year. Just last year alone, there's just a couple things. It's more the other drivers, what they did, rather than what he didn't do. And that's why I have him at 6.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yes.
And I will agree with you. 6 to 4, very, very interchangeable. But P5 for me is Carlos Sainz. So again, we literally just like one position apart from each other. He did I just delete the whole?
I can't
just
see.
deleted the whole notes.
There's an undo button, isn't there?
Isn't there like something where you shake it and it undoes? Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties. My bad. For some reason, a new notes opened for me, so I found again list again. So everything happened. Everything's fine. I swear a new notes opened for some sort of reason. But P5 for me is Carlos Sainz. Sainz did
Okay.
well. Ferrari was a bit slow this year, so I mean they did come back at the end. Very interchangeable, but Sainz did well. So P5 for me is going to
Sure.
be Carlos Sainz.
I have P5 as Oscar Piastri.
Oh wow, that far down.
I mean,
That is
there's
crazy.
some things to consider.
Okay.
Piastri again has been very, very impressive this early in his career, and of course he was P4 in the standings. There's just one driver below him that I have ahead of him, as I'm sure you know now.
Yep.
He had a couple good showings. Again, this is not a knock on Oscar Piastri. None of these are knocks at this point. All these drivers are way too high in the list for me to be knocking them for anything. This is just a few things, and I think the driver I have above him slightly just did impress me a bit more, even if I don't like him as much as I like Piastri, as much as it hurts me to say that as a McLaren fan.
Oh
There's
wow.
just there's a couple things that I think should be taken into consideration from the perspective of him, and not. And again, part of it maybe is a knock on the fact that because they were so interchangeable, I gave the benefit of the doubt to the driver that had the worst machinery, because Piastri did have arguably the best car in Formula One.
Are you gonna do what I think you're gonna do?
Probably.
Oh
Probably.
my god, that's insane.
Probably.
Okay, so position 4 is Piastri for me. He is further down the order, as I just noticed, but like he's still up there. I mean, he did pretty well. He did lose a bit to Norris, it's true, but he was pretty consistent. And I mean, as you just said, we can't really cut them a lot of slack. I mean, they're still incredible, and we're talking about the top 4 drivers here right now. So, still incredible performance. Just above Sainz, I will say I do feel like he outperformed Sainz. But yeah, P4 is Piastri for me.
Okay.
Don't do it. If you do this
P4
right now, okay, yeah,
is George Russell.
Oh, I thought you were gonna put Verstappen on 4. I was like, what?
Whoa. Who do you think I am? I'm not a fucking maniac. What the
Not
fuck?
a fucking Drive to Survive fan.
I'm not insane. I don't know where you got that from. I have some common sense. No, George Russell is P4, and the reason George Russell is P4 is because, well, I think one thing to consider is he should have one more win.
True.
He got one taken away in Belgium. That is just something to consider. His points would be significantly closer, by 25 closer points, and at that point, him, Piastri, and Sainz would have been so close that it would be very impressive for Russell in the significantly worse car compared to the other two to be as close as he was. Now, I'm not saying Sainz or Piastri necessarily underperformed, but because it was so close, and then Russell also does get a lot of props for beating Lewis Hamilton. Now, do I think Lewis Hamilton underperformed this year? 100%. But with that being said, yeah, he impressed me, and I think Russell, just again, because it's so close, he gets the edge given the circumstance he had, and then also beating Lewis and a couple other factors. Great qualifying performances during the year as well, and again, should have one more win, which should make their points even closer. Even if the car was illegal, I'm not gonna, because it's so close, again, that would make a big difference. I think Russell deserves that P4 spot.
And you can't forget, I mean, it was illegal because in Spa, after because the track is so long after the race, it's literally just quite the U-turn into the pit box, and normally they have the whole lap to still put some, get some marbles on the tires, so they're heavier. So that's also something to consider. Either way, P3 for me is gonna be Leclerc. Now, I think Leclerc did a really good job, and especially towards the end of the season, they got pretty close with Norris and Leclerc. Not incredibly close, but they were pretty close to each other. And
you can make a real argument.
I can make a real argument.
Like, you can make a real argument that they should be flipped. You know what I'm saying? Like you can make a real argument for Leclerc being better than Norris this year because of the machinery. I'm just saying there is an argument to be made. I'm not saying I made it. I'm just saying it could. Like they're so close. I'm just adding to your thing that they were so close that the fact that it was even a conversation, given how good the McLaren was, is probably a knock on Norris. But
That's
still,
true.
I'm.
That's true.
Whatever.
No, it is a good point. It is a very good point. They could have been swapped. The McLaren was super, super quick. But that's exactly why I put Leclerc above Piastri as well, because the car was incredible and Piastri didn't perform that well. So Leclerc behind Norris, but still really, really solid
Very
performance
close.
from him. Very, very close. Very interchangeable, the two of them.
I have a feeling we'll check out the rest of the way here. Actually, I didn't realize we're about to hit an hour.
Yeah, we were really we were scared of taking
time. Jesus
short,
Christ. Anyways,
time's
I have
dude.
Leclerc at P3, for the same reasons. He honestly, there's a genuine argument made, and I'm like this close to putting him above Norris. I fully think so, but I don't think the Ferrari was.
Would be fair.
I don't think the Ferrari was that bad compared to the McLaren to warrant that. And for that reason, I think, Norris is just slightly above, just because of points, really, just because of points and wins. But Leclerc did make a very good argument late in the year.
Yep, and I
with
think
that
these
being
last
said,
two, we all know. I mean, we don't have to do
Mhm.
them one by one because we all know who these two are
Norris
gonna
and
be.
Verstappen.
Norris and Verstappen. Norris coming in second and Verstappen on P1. Norris did really good this year, but he could have won the championship. So it's just like this. Got to put him down. Very interchangeable with Leclerc. It's very true. The McLaren was just an absolute rocket ship this year. And Verstappen, even though his car was not that great, was still somehow magically able to perform. That's why Verstappen's on P1, Norris is P2. He should have won the championship. He didn't. So that's the way it ended up for me.
I'll say this. I think even if Norris edged out the championship late in the year, like some magical way that happened, Verstappen would still be number one for me because Verstappen was just he made it so difficult. Even at that point, even if somehow at the very end of the year he lost it, World Championship would not be the best driver of the year. And I still think it'd be Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen is that good at this point in his career.
Yep.
And
he's incredible.
He made it
He's
so
insane.
difficult for Norris, despite the gap in machinery, and obviously whooped his teammate. So for that reason, Max Verstappen, regardless of the championship outcome, was going to be the number one driver of 2024. So, yeah.
And that concludes the
list. I think we're done then.
I think we're done.
I think we're done then.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys all for listening. Do not come for our throats for disagreeing with you on who you think were the better drivers. I'd love to hear your opinions, though, your personal rankings in the comments if you're on YouTube. Or if you watch this on TikTok or clips and stuff, you can leave it there, too, for the individual post. But make sure you follow us on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, Apple Music, all the places. And thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.